from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. Ava Brooks walked into Chicago's O'Hare International Airport with the triumphant energy of a warrior who had just conquered Everest. The media industry conference had just ended, and she had delivered a smashing presentation that left her competitors wide-eyed in admiration. Her PowerPoint slides, colorful and packed with razor-sharp data, had the entire auditorium applauding enthusiastically. As the head of PR at Pinnacle Media Group, one of New York's leading media conglomerates, Ava took pride in her quick thinking and sharp wit. She could turn a PR crisis into an opportunity with a clever social media campaign, and today, she felt absolutely unstoppable. But fate had other plans. Her flight back to New York was delayed indefinitely due to a massive snowstorm sweeping through the Midwest. The departure board flashed red warnings, and the terminal began to buzz like a disturbed beehive. Perfect, Ava muttered under her breath, voice dripping with sarcastic self-pity. Now I get to wander this airport like a caffeine-deprived zombie. She wheeled her compact suitcase through the chaos. Families complaining, business travelers making frustrated calls, and crying children in every corner. The chill of winter crept through her wool coat, making her shiver. Ava decided that, before dealing with this mess, she needed a strong cup of coffee to stay sane. The Starbucks near the departure gate was jam-packed, resembling a battleground for the last drop of energy. Ava skillfully used her elbows to make her way forward, dodging rolling suitcases and oversized handbags. A venti latte with vanilla syrup, she ordered quickly, her tone firm. The tired-looking barista nodded and slid a steaming cup across the counter. Ava grabbed it, savoring the warmth spreading through her hands, and spun around to escape the crowd. But then, bam! She slammed into what felt like a wall of solid muscle, as unyielding as reinforced concrete. Her coffee splattered, dousing the sleek black suit of the man in front of her. Milky brown latte droplets spread across the expensive fabric like an abstract painting, mingling with the sharp scent of cologne. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," Ava stammered, still clutching her now empty cup, as she looked up at the man she'd just assaulted with caffeine. And then her jaw dropped, her heart pounding like a drumbeat. It was Ethan Blake, her company's cold billionaire CEO, the man she and her colleagues jokingly referred to as the Frost Emperor. During office gossip sessions, Ethan stood tall, over 6'3", with neatly cut black hair and icy blue eyes that looked like a frozen lake under the airport's fluorescent lights. His chiseled face was expressionless, not a single wrinkle betraying any emotion. He looked like he had just stepped off the cover of Forbes, but with the demeanor of a statue. "Ava Brooks," he said, voice deep and flat, as if reading from a balance sheet. "Of course, it's you. And this time, you've decided to bathe me in coffee." He glanced down at the stain on his suit, but showed no hint of anger, just an eerily calm acceptance. Ava blushed, heat rushing from her cheeks down her neck, but quickly recovered. No way was she letting Ethan Blake see her flustered. Their history wasn't exactly friendly. 2 years ago, when Ava had first joined Pinnacle Media Group, she'd enthusiastically pitched a bold PR campaign at an executive meeting, but Ethan, ever stone-faced, had coldly shut her down in front of everyone. "This idea is too risky and lacks professionalism." The fallout, months of being sidelined, working endless overtime just to prove herself. Since then, Ava had made a habit of mocking him in emails and meetings, calling him the emotionless robot behind his back. "Oh, Mr. Blake, fancy seeing you stuck here, too," she said sweetly, her voice laced with fake politeness and just the right amount of sass. "I thought billionaires like you had private jets. Or do you just enjoy mingling with us regular folk for the thrill of it?" Ethan calmly dabbed the stain with a napkin from the counter, his movements slow and deliberate. Not even twitching a smile, he looked at her, something flickering in those icy eyes, perhaps amusement, though Ava couldn't be sure. "Private jets don't fly through blizzards, Brooks," he replied flatly, his tone as even as a voice memo, "and you still have a knack for chaos. Last time, it was a PR idea that nearly cost us a major contract, and now this." He motioned to the coffee stain with mild sarcasm, though his voice remained unblaming. They stood there, caught in the swirl of bustling travelers, verbally sparring like two Roman gladiators. Ava proudly launched into a monologue about her recent conference success. The event was amazing. You know, I presented a new PR strategy and got a standing ovation. If you'd listened to my ideas 2 years ago, we might already be market leaders. Her tone was challenging, her eyes gleaming. Ethan responded with sharp, clipped sentences that made her want to scream, but left no room for counterattack. You think you're clever, Brooks? That idea of yours nearly cost us $1 million client. Good thing I shut it down. He crossed his arms, standing firm, completely unfazed by the chaos around them. Oh, really? Better than sitting like a marble statue, too scared to take a risk. Ava shot back, hands on hips. Clearly enjoying the escalating tension, nearby passengers had begun to watch, some chuckling at the witty, heated exchange. Ava felt adrenaline surge. She may loathe the man, but she had to admit arguing with Ethan always made her feel alive. Their verbal battle came to a halt when the airport speaker blared. All flights canceled due to severe weather. Passengers are advised to find overnight accommodations and stay tuned for updates. The crowd groaned collectively. Ava sighed and turned to leave, planning to ignore Ethan entirely, but he glanced at her, something flickering in his eyes again. Maybe concern, but Ava didn't notice. All she knew was that this chaotic encounter was just the beginning, and the snowstorm outside was nothing compared to the emotional whirlwind about to unfold. She shook her head and wheeled her suitcase toward the information desk, muttering, "Of all people, why him, and why now?" Ethan remained where he was, silently watching her figure fade into the crowd. He had been paying attention to Ava for the past 2 years. Her cleverness, that radiant smile, even her sharp-tongued jabs that at times almost made him smile. But, as always, he kept his thoughts to himself. The program called Fate had only just begun. O'Hare Airport now looked more like a survival arena than a transit hub. Thousands of stranded passengers were crammed together, yelling into phones, desperately trying to find shelter from the raging snowstorm. Suitcases rolled and bumped into each other amidst a chorus of groans and sighs. Ava Brooks, her blonde hair now a tangled mess from all the pushing and shoving, was furiously tapping away on a hotel booking app. The screen kept flashing. "No rooms available." "Great," she muttered in frustration. "Guess I'll be sleeping on an airport bench or pitching a tent in the parking lot like it's the Arctic expedition." Pulling her compact suitcase behind her, she squeezed through the crowd, searching for a quiet corner to think. Suddenly, a deep voice cut through her mental chaos. "Brooks, come with me." Ava jumped and turned around, only to see Ethan Blake, still in his black suit, now dry from the earlier coffee incident. His face, as emotionless as ever. He stood tall and composed amid the airport chaos, as if the blizzard outside was nothing more than a light breeze. "Come with you? What for? Planning to make me mop the floors or something?" She shot back, arms crossed, her voice laced with suspicion. But curiosity and a lack of better options won out, and she followed him. Ethan didn't respond, just strode purposefully toward a tucked-away VIP service desk. Ava had to half-jog to keep up, her suitcase clattering behind her. "Could you slow down a bit? Not everyone has legs as long as a telephone pole," she grumbled. Ethan glanced back briefly, his expression unreadable. At the VIP counter, he spoke with calm authority, his voice steady but commanding. Ava tried to eavesdrop but only caught a few curt phrases before he signed something. The staff nodded rapidly and handed him a key card. Ethan turned to her. "There's only one suite left in the airport hotel. I booked it. We'll share it." "Share with you? No way." Ava practically shouted, her face flushing as if someone had poured boiling water on her. The thought of sharing a room with the infamous emotionless robot sent a shiver down her spine, not of fear, but of something she didn't want to admit. Arms folded, she stared him down. "You seriously couldn't find your own room? With your pile of cash? I figured you could just buy the whole hotel." Ethan looked at her, his icy blue eyes steady and calm. "This snowstorm doesn't care about money, Brooks. Either we share the room, or you sleep in the hallway. Your call." His tone was emotionless, but Ava knew he wasn't joking. She glanced out the glass doors. Snow was falling thick and fast, the wind howling like it wanted to swallow the whole airport. The idea of sleeping outside made her shiver again. "Fine," she sighed, reluctantly nodding, "but just for one night, and don't even think about trying anything." Ethan shrugged without a word and led the way to the airport hotel. A luxury building connected directly to the terminal. Inside the elevator, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Ava glanced sideways at him, still silent and focused on his phone, not going to say anything like, "Thanks for agreeing to room with someone as terrifying as me," she teased, trying to break the silence. "You talk too much, Brooks," Ethan replied without looking up. But Ava swore she saw the corner of his mouth twitch. Or maybe the elevator lighting was playing tricks on her. The suite was far beyond anything Ava had imagined. A faux fireplace cast a soft glow across the room, the cream leather sofa gleamed with luxury, and a huge window framed the whiteout conditions outside. But the biggest problem stood right in the middle. One single king-size bed, its white linens looking suspiciously inviting. Ava turned to Ethan, arching a brow. "Well, isn't this cozy? You're taking the couch, right? Or would you rather sleep on the floor for some good old-fashioned character building?" Ethan didn't reply. He simply removed his jacket, hung it neatly, and sat on the couch, opening his laptop. "The bed is yours." "I'm working," he said, voice flat. Ava raised an eyebrow. Surprised at his easy concession, she wheeled her suitcase into the corner and tried to act casual, though a spark of curiosity flared in her chest. "Ethan Blake, the man who never cracks a smile, is willingly sharing a room with me. Something's off." What Ava didn't know was that Ethan had quietly orchestrated everything. Before leading her to the VIP counter, he had called his assistant and canceled his reservation at another hotel. He'd heard rumors of drunk men harassing women during storm delays like this, and while Ava drove him crazy with her snark, he wasn't about to let her be vulnerable in a chaotic airport overnight. But he kept that to himself and let her continue her jabs throughout the evening. Ava flopped onto the bed, stretching out and sighing dramatically. "With how cold you are, I bet the floor feels just fine," she quipped with a giggle. Ethan didn't respond, his fingers tapping away at the laptop keys. She turned on the TV, and a new battle began. The remote control war. Ava wanted to watch a romantic comedy on Netflix. Ethan insisted on CNN News. "Do you even know what fun is? Watch the rom-com. You might learn how to smile," she said, snatching the remote. "Rom-coms won't pay off your student loans, Brooks," Ethan replied dryly, still staring at his laptop. Ava's jaw dropped. "Wait, how do you know about my student loans? Did you investigate me?" "I read employee records," Ethan said simply. In truth, he remembered everything about Ava, from her love of pancakes to how she always wore red sweaters on Fridays. Ava pouted but decided not to press further. She put on the romantic comedy, letting the light-hearted laughter fill the suite and drown out the storm outside. That night, Ava lay awake, tossing and turning on the bed. She couldn't sleep. The thought of Ethan just a few feet away on the sofa made her restless. He was supposed to be her arch-nemesis, but why was she suddenly wondering who he was underneath all that ice? As for Ethan, though he pretended to sleep, he heard every sigh she made. He lay still, wondering if sharing this room was a mistake or a rare opportunity he wasn't ready to admit. The storm outside howled on, but inside that room, another kind of storm had quietly begun. Late at night, the luxurious airport hotel suite was wrapped in silence, broken only by the howling snowstorm outside the window. A dramatic winter symphony playing against the frosty glass. The warm glow of the electric fireplace cast faint shadows on the white walls, not quite enough to chase away the chill in the air. Ava Brooks lay on the king-size bed, blanket pulled up to her chin, but her eyes were wide open. Just a few feet away, Ethan Blake was on the sofa, his breathing calm and steady, as if completely unbothered by sharing a room with her. The thought of being this close to the emotionless robot made her restless, her heart pounding faster than normal. "What the hell is wrong with me?" she whispered, shaking her head to brush away the ridiculous thoughts swirling in her mind. Unable to bear the awkward silence, Ava reached for her phone on the nightstand. She opened her messaging app, intending to vent to Mia, her best friend from college and go-to partner for everything from work drama to failed dates. Her fingers flew across the screen as she typed, a mischievous grin tugging at her lips. "Girl, I'm stuck in a hotel with Mr. Frostface. Same room. And damn, he's kind of hot up close. Those abs, bet they look insane shirtless. Ugh, dirty thoughts. But I still hate him. Don't get it twisted." She added a grinning emoji, hit send without double-checking, then tossed the phone aside and giggled to herself. Mia is going to scream when she sees this, she thought, imagining the emoji explosion her friend would send in response, but her smile froze in place the moment her phone lit up with a new notification. She picked it up, and her heart dropped. The message hadn't gone to Mia. It had gone to Ethan Blake. His number saved from a work meeting months ago under the name Mr. Frost Emperor, now glaring at her from the top of the screen. "Oh no," Ava whispered, her voice trembling, her face turned sheet white. She frantically tapped on the message, trying to delete it, unsend it, do something. But the app coolly replied, "Delivered." Shit, she muttered, clutching her head like the world had just ended. Across the room, Ethan's phone buzzed. He opened his eyes. He'd never actually fallen asleep and picked it up. As he read Ava's message, his eyebrows lifted in genuine surprise, a rare reaction for a face that rarely moved. For the first time in 2 years, the corners of Ethan's mouth curved ever so slightly into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. He reread it. "Kind of hot up close. Those abs." He shook his head, amused and frankly stunned that Ava Brooks, the same woman who constantly roasted him with backhanded remarks, had just sent that, but instead of irritation or awkwardness, he felt something else, something warm flickering inside him, like a sunbeam cracking through the surface of his frozen heart. Ethan calmly typed a reply, each word deliberate. "Is that so?" Just 3 words, short, cryptic, loaded with meaning. He hit send and set the phone down, then closed his eyes again, feigning sleep. But inside, a small storm was brewing. The message had stirred memories of all the times he'd quietly observed Ava over the past 2 years. The way her eyes lit up when she pitched an idea, the way she took control in a PR crisis, the way her emails could cut like razors and still make him want to laugh. She was bold, messy, alive, everything he wasn't, everything he had shut out after the trauma of his family unraveling years ago. Meanwhile, Ava wanted to disappear. She leapt off the bed, bolted barefoot into the bathroom, and slammed the door shut behind her. Splashing cold water on her face, she stared at herself in the mirror, her cheeks burning bright red, eyes wide with horror. Why didn't he yell at me? Why just, "Is that so? What the hell does that even mean?" she muttered, scrubbing her face as if she could wash away the most mortifying moment of her life. "He must think I'm a total idiot. No, worse, a perv. Who sends messages like that to their boss?" She groaned, tugging at her hair, imagining all the ways this could backfire. Would Ethan read the message out loud in their next team meeting? Would he forward it to HR? After several minutes of internal self-flagellation, Ava took a deep breath, forced herself to look somewhat composed, and stepped out of the bathroom. Ethan was still lying on the couch, eyes closed, breathing evenly, like nothing had happened. She crept back into bed and pulled the blanket over her face like a shield. She didn't dare glance in his direction. Are you asleep?" she whispered, voice trembling. Ethan opened his eyes, the firelight flickering in his deep blue gaze. "Not yet," he said, voice calm but with a slight teasing edge. "But you really should double-check your texts, Brooks. Not everyone's going to misunderstand them the way I did." He emphasized the word misunderstand with a barely there smirk, and Ava swore there was actual humor in his voice, something she'd never thought possible. I sent it to the wrong person," she mumbled, cheeks burning again as she burrowed deeper into the blanket. That was obviously a mistake. She rolled over, groaning into the pillow. Every tiny sound Ethan made, whether it was shifting on the sofa or tapping on his phone, made her flinch. That night turned into a hilariously awkward memory in the making. Ava spent hours silently cursing herself, while Ethan, still pretending to sleep, couldn't stop thinking about the message. Did she really think he was hot? Or was it just some random joke between her and a friend? For the first time, he realized he wanted to know the answer. Ava, caught in a whirlwind of embarrassment, secretly hoped the snowstorm would last for days just to give her time to recover from the humiliation. But somewhere deep inside her, she couldn't ignore it anymore. Ethan Blake, as cold as he seemed, was suddenly a mystery she wanted to figure out. And that night, with the storm outside and the fire flickering inside, an invisible thread quietly formed between 2 people who never thought they'd connect. The next morning, Ava Brooks woke up with a heavy head and the lingering shame of last night's accidentally hot text Pale sunlight filtered weakly through the thick snowfall outside the window, giving the suite a sleepy, wintry stillness. She lay motionless under the king-size bed's comforter, tucked up to her nose, eyes sneaking a glance toward the sofa. Ethan Blake was already up, who knew since when, sitting perfectly straight on the couch, typing away on his laptop like the world itself was a massive Excel spreadsheet. Does he ever actually sleep? Ava muttered under her breath, trying to keep her face neutral as she sat up, her tangled blonde hair resembling a bird's nest. She fully expected Ethan to throw a sarcastic comment her way about last night's steamy message, or worse, to use it as office gossip ammo for the rest of eternity. But instead, he was different. After she washed up and stepped out of the bathroom in an oversized gray sweater, she caught a whiff of something warm and sweet. On the table near the fireplace sat a breakfast tray, pancakes drizzled with honey syrup, a few slices of fresh strawberries, and a steaming cup of latte, exactly how she liked it. Without looking up from his laptop, Ethan pushed the plate toward her. "Eat, Brooks. You get cranky when you're hungry." Ava blinked, genuinely stunned. The witty comeback she'd prepared vanished. "You knew I like pancakes?" she asked, sitting down and gripping the fork, her eyes still locked on him, searching for a hint of mockery. Ethan merely shrugged, his tone flat. "I pay attention to my employees." But in truth, he remembered it clearly from a company party 2 years ago, when Ava, then the enthusiastic new hire, had devoured 3 plates of pancakes and gotten into a lively debate with the chef about syrup consistency. Ethan had watched from the corner of the room, silent but oddly fascinated. The image stuck with him like a slow-motion reel. Thanks," Ava mumbled, a strange warmth spreading in her chest. She cut a bite of pancake, trying to act casual, but couldn't help glancing at Ethan. He was still focused on his laptop, but his eyes, did they look softer, less icy? Or was she imagining it? "You're not eating? Or do billionaires just run on ambition?" she blurted out, unable to suppress her usual snark. Ethan finally glanced up, those blue eyes brushing over her. "I've eaten. You should focus on your plate before it gets cold." His tone was level, but Ava swore she caught the tiniest smirk, just a flicker at the corner of his mouth, and it totally threw her off. They ate in relative silence, the only sounds being clinking utensils and the wind howling against the windows. After breakfast, both turned to their laptops. Ava editing next week's PR report, Ethan absorbed in a video call with his assistant. "Workaholic robot," Ava muttered, shaking her head. But even as she mumbled it, she couldn't help being a little impressed by his focus. Meanwhile, Ethan snuck glances at her, watching how she bit her lip in concentration or absent-mindedly twirled a strand of hair around her finger. He reminded himself to stay professional, to keep his distance, but something about her made that increasingly difficult. Time passed. The light outside faded as the blizzard raged on. Near dusk, just as Ava sent out a long email to her PR team, a sharp pop sounded, and the room went dark. The lights blinked out. The fireplace shut off. Only the faint glow of dying embers lit the room. "Great. Now a power outage." Ava sighed, her tone a mix of sarcasm and genuine complaint. She shivered, the winter air creeping through her sweater sleeves as she curled into the armchair. Ethan stood and calmly checked the breaker. Storm knocked out the grid. "Might be a few hours," he said, then turned to find Ava hugging her arms, lips slightly trembling from the cold. Without a word, he removed his suit jacket, still the last remnant of his polished image after the coffee incident, and draped it over her shoulders. The gesture was smooth, instinctive, like he didn't even need to think about it. Ava stiffened, glancing up at him. The firelight flickered in his deep blue eyes. "You care?" she asked, sarcasm laced in her voice, but unable to hide the warmth bubbling in her chest. "I thought all you did was bark orders and reject everyone's ideas." Ethan took the seat across from her, just an arm's reach away. "You think I'm that heartless, Brooks?" he asked, voice low, not cold, just quiet. "I just choose to live differently." Ava raised an eyebrow. It was the first time he'd responded without mocking or cutting her off. She tugged his jacket tighter, the faint scent of his cologne wrapping around her like an invisible embrace, making her pulse quicken. Silence fell again, except this time it wasn't tense, just still, not one to sit quietly for too long. Ava cracked a joke. "You know, Sitting here like this feels like a horror movie. All we need now is a vampire jumping out of the corner." Ethan didn't laugh, but his eyes drifted to the fire, something distant flickering there. "No vampires," he said softly. "But there are worse things." That caught Ava's attention. She tilted her head. For the first time, Ethan wasn't the cold CEO. He was human, vulnerable, a man with hidden layers she never thought existed. "Like what? A failed contract or my scandalous little text?" she teased, trying to lighten the mood. But Ethan didn't answer immediately. He looked at her, really looked, and his gaze cut right through her. "Like letting emotions take over," he said quietly. "I lost my parents in a car crash, Brooks. After that, I trained myself not to feel, no smiling, no sadness, no anger, just work." Ava went still. She hadn't expected him to open up, definitely not like this. She always thought he'd mock her, or at least keep that frosty CEO mask on. But now he was sharing, genuinely sharing a piece of himself no one at the company likely knew. "You're not weak," she said softly, eyes glistening in the firelight, "just frozen. And you know, ice can melt if there's enough fire." She smiled gently, then quickly added, "And sorry again for that text last night. It was really a mistake." Ethan looked at her, the corner of his mouth curling ever so slightly for the second time in 24 hours, a record. "It's fine. It was, entertaining," he said, voice low, carrying the rarest trace of humor. Ava giggled, the embarrassment finally dissolving into something warmer. For the first time, they talked, really talked without snark or tension. She told him about the time she almost flunked out of college for sleeping through an exam. Ethan, to her shock, shared that he'd once secretly kept a stray cat in his office despite being allergic. "You, a cat? I thought you'd be more into robot pets," Ava teased. This time, she swore he almost laughed. That night, with only the glow of dying embers and the storm outside, the two enemies began to understand each other just a little. Ava saw that Ethan wasn't just Mr. Frost Emperor, but a man carrying scars. And Ethan, for the first time in years, felt his heart beat faster, not from fear or stress, but because of her radiant, mischievous smile. An invisible thread was tightening between them, and neither of them was quite ready to admit it. The snowstorm had finally passed, leaving O'Hare Airport in a state of chaotic relief. Flight boards began blinking back to life, and passengers, exhausted but eager, rushed toward the check-in lines like bees from a broken hive. Ava Brooks wheeled her suitcase through the terminal, her blonde hair tied in a neater ponytail than the day before, but inside, her mind was a tangled mess. That accidental text and last night's fireside conversation had shaken something inside her. Ethan Blake, whom she'd once nicknamed Mr. Emotionless, wasn't just a walking iceberg after all. He was a man with deep scars, and she had to admit a strange pull she was no longer able to ignore. By what felt like no coincidence at all, they'd been assigned seats next to each other on the return flight to New York. A coincidence Ava highly suspected was Ethan's doing, using his CEO influence. But she had no proof. As the plane took off, Ava snuck a glance sideways. Ethan was already immersed in a thick report on his tablet. He wore a crisp white shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal firm, toned forearm. His dark hair was slightly tousled from the cold wind outside. Attractive in his own icy way, Ava thought, quickly turning her face toward the window as her cheeks flushed. Am I insane? No way I'm catching feelings for the guy who made my life hell for months. Next to her, Ethan was quieter than usual. He flipped pages on his tablet, but his mind wasn't on the numbers. Their fireside talk from the night before his first time opening up about his past had awakened something he thought long buried. Her warm laughter, the way she cracked jokes even when shivering, and yes, that hilariously misguided text, it had all chipped away at the armor he'd spent years building. But Ethan Blake didn't do feelings. He'd built his entire empire on control. And now Ava Brooks was unraveling all of it. He stole a glance at her. She was staring out the window, the pale light illuminating her long lashes and softly pressed lips. He reminded himself to stay distant, but his heart refused to obey. The cabin was quiet, just the steady hum of the engines and occasional soft conversations. Ava, unable to stand the silence, turned to him with her usual teasing smirk. Don't you ever get tired of reading reports all day? What are you trying to do? Set a world record for non-stop work, she said. tilting her head with playful sarcasm. Ethan looked up, those deep blue eyes locking onto hers. "Don't you ever get tired of talking?" he replied evenly. But the corner of his mouth twitched a smile, a real one, even if small. Ava recognized it now. She laughed, relieved he didn't bring up the text. "Touché, Mr. Press. Blake. But at least I know how to relax. You should try it sometime. Life might feel a little less icy." He didn't reply, just looked at her longer than usual. And Ava's heart stumbled. She turned back to the window, pulse racing. "I don't hate him anymore," she admitted silently, a thought that was both strange and terrifying. She had always seen Ethan as the embodiment of cold detachment, but after being snowed in together, she'd seen something more. His quiet protectiveness, his uncanny memory for her favorite breakfast, the pain behind his controlled exterior. She shook her head, trying to dismiss the thought that she might actually be into him. The flight stretched on in a mix of companionable silence and brief, surprisingly easy conversation. Ava told a story about how she'd once spilled coffee on a client during her first PR meeting, turning a disaster into a running office joke. Ethan, though usually reserved, shared a rare tale of how he once got stuck in the company elevator and had to climb out himself. "You climbed out of an elevator?" "I figured you'd call in a SWAT team," Ava teased. This time, she definitely saw him smile. When the plane landed at JFK in New York, dusk had already fallen. Passengers poured out into the terminal, and Ava grabbed her suitcase, ready to toss one last playful jab before they parted ways. But before she could speak, Ethan turned to her, his expression more serious than she'd ever seen it. "Thank you for reminding me what it feels like to feel something, Brooks," he said, voice low and sincere. Each word etched into the air between them. Ava froze, her hand tightening on the suitcase handle. Her heart thundered. "You're serious?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Ethan didn't respond. He just looked at her deep, intense, as if wanting to say something more but choosing not to. Then he turned away and walked toward the sleek black car waiting for him at the curb, leaving Ava standing there, stunned. A goofy smile slowly spreading across her lips. She pulled her suitcase toward the airport exit, her mind spinning. Did he really just say that? "Emotions about me?" she muttered, a mix of shock and delight dancing through her veins. As she climbed into her taxi and stared out the window, her thoughts stayed back in the moment when Ethan looked at her like she wasn't just another employee. And Ethan, seated in the back of his car, gripped his phone tightly, wondering if he had just made a terrible mistake or opened a door he had kept locked for far too long. That invisible thread between them was tightening. Neither of them knew it yet. But this flight was just the beginning of a longer journey, one full of twists, emotions, and surprises neither of them could predict. On the first Monday after the Chicago trip, Ava Brooks stepped into the sleek glass tower of Pinnacle Media Group in the heart of Manhattan with her thoughts tangled like a ball of yarn. Ethan Blake's words at JFK, "Thank you for reminding me what it feels like to feel," echoed in her head, refusing to let her focus. She had spent the entire weekend replaying his tone, his gaze, his every inflection, wondering if she'd imagined the softer version of Ethan, no longer the emotionless CEO, but a real man with a heart slowly thawing. But the moment she stepped into the office, her hope began to unravel. Ethan, seated in his top-floor glass office, was back to his usual cold, unreadable self, as if their time stranded in Chicago had been nothing more than a snow-dusted dream. Snow fantasy, that's all it was, Ava muttered, as she set her bag down at her desk in the PR department. She opened her laptop, trying to focus on emails. But her thoughts kept drifting back to that hotel suite, the jacket he draped over her, the story about his parents, that rare, disarming smile. "I'm losing it. No way I'm hoping he'd care again." She shook her head, mentally scolding herself. But less than an hour later, her desk phone rang. "Ava Brooks, my office now." Ethan's voice crackled through the line, curt and cold, like always. Ava raised a brow, heart skipping a beat. "Great. Is this it? Am I about to get fired over that stupid text?" She straightened her navy blazer, took a breath, and stepped into the elevator. The conference room on the 30th floor was as sleek as ever, with glass walls overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Ethan sat at the head of the long table, papers and a laptop laid out in front of him. He looked up as she entered, his blue eyes passing over her. Unreadable, "Take a seat, Brooks. We need to discuss the fall campaign logo color," he said, tone flat as usual. Eva blinked. "Logo color? Are you serious?" She sat down, crossing her arms to hide her confusion. "I thought you called me up here to scold me about, well, Chicago." She immediately regretted saying it out loud. Ethan raised a brow, just slightly, but enough to make Eva blush. "Chicago? You mean the coffee incident or the text?" His voice held a hint of teasing sarcasm, and in his eyes there was the faintest sparkle Eva had never seen before. She wanted to sink into the floor, but quickly regained composure. "Right. Logo. A suggest navy blue. It's sleek, modern, on trend. Are we done, Mr. Blake?" The meeting lasted exactly 15 minutes. Ethan asked absurdly specific questions: font size, logo placement, and even whether the snowy palette in Chicago had influenced her choice. "Is he messing with me?" Eva wondered, but every time she tried to hit back with sarcasm, something in his gaze made her hesitate, not cold, but almost secretive. In the days that followed, Ethan continued to summon her for the most bizarre meetings, revisiting the tone of internal emails, slide layout critique, and the most ridiculous one yet, brainstorming ways to make the office more welcoming. Eva began to suspect he was finding excuses to see her, but she couldn't be sure. Her co-workers were starting to notice. At lunch, Emma from marketing leaned in and whispered, "Eva, are you getting promoted or fired? The boss keeps calling you in, and I've seen the way he looks at you. It's weird." "Weird? How?" Eva asked, keeping her head down as she poked at her salad, trying to hide her red face. Emma grinned wickedly, "Like he wants to invite you for coffee, not fire you." Eva nearly choked. "Are you crazy? Ethan Blake asking someone out for coffee? The man only knows how to invite people to fix fonts." But deep down, Eva couldn't deny something was different. Ethan wasn't shutting her down in meetings anymore. He listened. He asked questions. And sometimes, his eyes lingered on her longer than they should have. One day, after she pitched a bold new PR strategy, he nodded and said, "Good work, Brooks. Keep going." The room went silent. Every head turned. Eva sat down, heart hammering. Did he just praise me? Did I hear that right? That weekend, Eva stayed late at the office to finish a quarterly report. The building was quiet, the skyline outside glowing. She didn't notice the elevator ding until Ethan appeared. He wore a black button-up shirt and held a coffee cup. He walked straight to her desk. "Still here, Brooks?" Eva looked up, scrambling to sound casual. "Not all of us have assistants to do everything for us. Some of us still make our own reports." Ethan didn't respond. He just placed the cup on her desk. "Latte, vanilla syrup. Don't stay too late." And before she could speak, he turned and walked away. Eva stared after him, mouth open. Then she looked at the cup. The scent hit her instantly. Just like at the Starbucks in Chicago. "He did that on purpose," she muttered, but the corner of her lips curved before she could stop it. Those glances, that coffee, the way he never mentioned the text again but somehow kept showing up. Ethan was no longer Mr. Robot. He was a puzzle she wasn't sure she could solve. On Friday, while Eva Brooks was buried in a mountain of emails and reports at her desk, a receptionist walked into the PR department holding an elegant white envelope trimmed with shimmering gold foil. "Miss Brooks, this was delivered for you," the receptionist said, curiosity in her voice. Eva frowned as she took the envelope, immediately noticing the thick, luxurious paper and the faint scent of high-end ink. Inside was a handwritten invitation in elegant script. "Eva Brooks, you are cordially invited to attend Pinnacle Media Group's annual gala at the Plaza Hotel, Saturday at 7 p.m. Ethan Blake." She read it twice, then a third time. "Ethan Blake invited me personally with a handwritten card," she mumbled, feeling like she'd just stumbled into a cliché romance movie. She turned to Emma, her coworker, sipping coffee at the next desk. "Hey, have you ever seen the boss handwrite an invitation? This is a trap, right?" Emma's eyes widened as she looked at the card. "A trap? Girl, this is your chance to wear a killer dress and make the entire company jealous. You have to go. I want details. All of them." Eva hesitated all day. A part of her wanted to decline, afraid this might be some elaborate prank or a subtle form of revenge for the infamous accidental text in Chicago. But another part of her, the part she kept trying to suppress, was excited. In the end, curiosity won. She rummaged through her closet and picked a stunning red dress that hugged her curves with a deep V-neck, just bold enough to be daring but still tasteful. "If I'm going all in," she told herself, smoothing her golden hair in the mirror. Saturday night, the Plaza Hotel sparkled with chandeliers, and soft jazz music floated through the air. Pinnacle Media Group's annual gala was a glamorous affair filled with senior executives, partners, and members of the press. Ava stepped into the grand lobby, her red heels tapping confidently against the marble floor, drawing more than a few stares. She felt powerful, but her heart was pounding. Did Ethan really invite me himself? Or did his assistant send this? She wondered, gripping her tiny clutch tighter. Then she saw him. Ethan Blake stood in the center of the room, wearing a tailored black tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled, and his piercing blue eyes scanning the crowd. He looked like he belonged in a Hollywood film, commanding, mysterious, utterly magnetic. When his eyes landed on Ava, she swore he froze for just a moment, as if her red dress had thrown him off balance. But he quickly composed himself and made his way toward her. "You came, Brooks," he said, his voice low but warmer than usual. "I thought you'd decline." Ava raised a brow, flashing her signature sarcastic smile. "Decline a handwritten invitation from Mr. Blake? Never. I was afraid you'd summon me to a meeting about invitation design." Ethan smirked, just a small curve of his lips, but enough to make Ava's heart skip. "Careful, Brooks. I might start reconsidering our logo colors next." The gala was in full swing. Speeches, champagne, networking, and conversations about company strategy. Ava was mid-conversation with a business partner when the microphone crackled, and Ethan took the stage. He spoke about the company's milestones, the team's efforts, and then suddenly paused, his gaze locking onto Ava across the room. "I'd like to give a special thanks to Ava Brooks," he said clearly, his voice echoing throughout the ballroom. "She's brought fresh energy to this company with bold ideas and remarkable dedication, and for that, I'm officially promoting her to Director of PR Strategy, effective next month." The room went silent for a moment, then erupted in applause. Ava stood frozen, her mouth slightly open, heart thumping wildly. "He's serious?" she whispered, blushing with a mix of shock and exhilaration. Her co-workers turned to stare. Some whispered, others clapped with wide grins. Emma, standing a few feet away, winked like, "Told you so." Ava gripped her champagne glass tightly, doing her best to stay composed, even as her legs felt like jelly. After the speech, Ethan descended from the stage and walked straight toward her. "Congratulations, Brooks," he said, his eyes glowing with something she couldn't quite place something honest. Still stunned, Ava blurted out, "You did that just so I'd never dare send another wrong text, didn't you?" Ethan chuckled, a deep, real laugh that made nearby heads turn. It was the first time Ava or anyone in the room had ever heard him laugh. "Maybe," he said, then leaned in slightly, his voice just for her. "Or maybe I just want you to stay at this company longer." Ava's face flushed. She had no witty comeback. That night, beneath the chandeliers and soft jazz, Ava realized something. Ethan Blake wasn't just a puzzle. He was a puzzle she wanted to solve. The gala at the plaza was winding down. The chandeliers dimmed, the soft jazz faded into murmurs, and conversations grew hushed. Ava Brooks still felt lightheaded from Ethan Blake's unexpected speech. The public thank you and the promotion to Director of PR Strategy had placed her at the center of every conversation. She stood in a quiet corner of the ballroom, a champagne glass in hand, accepting congratulations from colleagues and partners. But her mind was spinning with one question. What on earth was Ethan Blake thinking? And more importantly, why? As the crowd began to thin, Ava noticed Ethan near the entrance, speaking with senior staff. His gaze swept across the room and landed on her. For a brief second, she was certain his eyes held something else. Something that beckoned. Before she could overthink it, he was walking toward her, tall, composed, striking in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. His deep blue eyes sparkled under the soft lights. "Brooks, walk with me," he said. His voice was low, but lacking the commanding tone she'd grown used to. Ava arched a brow, heart skipping. Where to? Another meeting about color palettes? She quipped, but still followed him, her red heels clicking across the marble floor. Ethan led her through a quiet hallway, up a stairwell that opened to the rooftop terrace of the plaza. As the door creaked open, a gust of night wind brushed against them, carrying the scent of New York exhaust fumes, neon lights, and the city's unstoppable heartbeat. The rooftop was strung with small lanterns that swayed gently in the breeze, casting warm golden glows. Beyond the railing, the Manhattan skyline glittered like a dream. Ava inhaled deeply, the crisp air stirring a mix of thrill and nervousness in her chest. "You brought me up here to scope out the next PR campaign view?" she teased, her voice light to mask the fluttering in her stomach. Ethan stood by the railing, gazing out at the city. He was silent for a moment, then turned toward her. "No, Brooks, I just wanted to talk. Really talk." His voice was softer than she'd ever heard, honest, even vulnerable. Ava folded her arms, the breeze tugging at her red dress. She tilted her head, trying to read his expression. "Talk to me. Are you feeling okay, Mr. Blake?" He chuckled, a low, real laugh that made her momentarily freeze. It was only the second time she'd heard him laugh that night, and both times had left her utterly speechless. "You always surprise me, Ava," he said, calling her by her first name for the very first time. "And I'm not used to that. I've noticed you for a long time, but I was afraid to open up. My past, it's made me rigid. You're the opposite of everything I am. You're bold, alive, unpredictably. I didn't think I could keep up." Ava's breath caught. She had never imagined Ethan Blake, the famously stone-faced CEO, could say anything like that. You noticed me?" she asked, voice trembling, attempting a half-joking tone. "You mean when you rejected all my ideas and sent me those soul-crushing feedback emails at 2 a.m.? Ethan smiled, genuinely. "Those too, and the way you laugh with your co-workers. The way you handle a crisis like no one else in this company. You make me want to break through my own ice." He paused, struggling with himself, then added, "But I didn't know how until that accidental text." Ava flushed crimson at the memory of that message. She took a deep breath and asked, "So, what did you think about that text? I mean, you must have laughed your head off, right?" She tried to sound casual, but her voice wavered with nerves. Ethan looked directly into her eyes, the lanterns glinting in his gaze. "Was it true?" he asked, voice deep, every word deliberate, "because I think you're incredibly hot, too." He smiled a real smile, wide and bright, softening his entire face. Ava burst into laughter, partly from embarrassment, partly from disbelief. "You what? I need to record this. I need proof," she joked, but her heart pounded, warmth rushing through her limbs. They stood there, laughing on the rooftop, their laughter mingling with the night breeze. For the first time, the tension between them melted, replaced by a surprising ease, as if they'd stepped across some invisible boundary. "You know," Ava said more softly, "I used to think you were a robot, but now I think you're just really good at hiding." She took a step closer, enough to feel the heat radiating from his body in the cool air. "And thanks for the promotion. I still can't believe it's real." Ethan's gaze softened further, deeper than she'd ever seen. "It is real, but I didn't do it to keep you at the company. I did it because you earned it." He paused, then added quietly, "And maybe because I want to see more of you up close." Ava didn't joke. She didn't tease. She simply smiled, genuinely, for once without sarcasm. That night, on a rooftop in the heart of the city, two former enemies realized they weren't just solving a puzzle anymore. They were beginning a whole new chapter, one full of things neither of them could have predicted. In the weeks following the gala at the plaza, it was as if a new era had quietly dawned at Pinnacle Media Group, at least through the eyes of Ava Brooks and everyone watching. Ethan Blake, once known far and wide as Mr. Two, emotionless, began to change in ways that sent ripples of curiosity through the office. Gone was the CEO who barked orders through curt emails and dismissed ideas without blinking. In his place was a man who showed up at the PR department more than occasionally, and whose subtle gestures sent Ava's heart into overdrive and her co-workers into a whispering frenzy. One Tuesday morning, as Ava struggled with a tricky advertising campaign, She looked up to find Ethan standing at her desk, holding a coffee cup. Latte? Vanilla syrup? He said, placing it down casually, his ocean blue eyes gleaming with a teasing glint. Don't overwork yourself, Brooks. Ava blinked. Stunne. You made this yourself? She asked. Suspicious? Ethan shrugged, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. I have more hidden talents than you think. He turned and walked away before she could form a reply, leaving Ava holding the coffee, blushing furiously, and wearing the goofiest smile of her life. Emma from marketing, who had witnessed the whole thing from the printer, nudged Ava with wide eyes. Girl, Ethan Blake brought you coffee. I've worked here 5 years, and I've never seen that man leave the 30th floor unless it's a board meeting. What exactly did you do to him in Chicago? Ava rolled her eyes, her face flaming. Nothing. It's just coffee. Emma smirked. Vanilla syrup. Your favorite. Hilarious. Mr. CEO turned personal barista. But Ethan didn't stop there. He started asking Ava small, casual questions, not through work emails, but in person. Did you eat this morning? Doing anything this weekend? At first, Ava stuck to her usual sarcasm. Oh, wow, Mr. Blake actually cares? I thought you only communicated with spreadsheets. But every time Ethan smiled a real, warm, quiet smile, she felt herself soften just a little more. She texted Mia, her best friend from college, to tell her everything. Mia replied within seconds. You're joking. Ethan Blake smiled, like with his face. Are you telling me you melted the Frost Emperor? I need details. Ava giggled, but couldn't deny she was spiraling. She was afraid this was all temporary. A fluke, but Ethan's every glance, every gentle question, every latte pulled her in further. They started spending time together quietly, not officially dating, but unmistakably something. One evening, Ethan invited her to a small sandwich shop in Greenwich Village, insisting they had the best paninis in the city. When she arrived, he was already waiting, wearing a deep blue button-down instead of his usual power suit, more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. You chose this place for market research? Ava teased, sliding into the seat across from him. No, Ethan said, half smiling. I wanted to try being normal for once. He tried to tell a story about the time he accidentally set his kitchen on fire, but delivered it in such a dry tone and ended it with, So, I bought the restaurant to make up for it. That Ava burst out laughing. You're a disaster at telling jokes, Ethan. I'm going to have to train you, she said, eyes gleaming. He only shrugged, but the soft smile on his face told her he didn't mind. And it wasn't just Ava who noticed the change. Jack from finance, known for his gossip, pulled Ava aside after a team meeting where Ethan smiled twice during her PR pitch. Brooks, Jack whispered, wide-eyed. What are you? A witch. Blake smiled twice in 1 hour. I've been here 5 years. Never seen his mouth curve more than 3 seconds. Ava laughed and feigned innocence. Maybe he's allergic to good ideas. And mine triggered a reaction. But deep down, she knew Jack was right. Ethan was changing, and people were starting to talk. There were funny moments, like the day Ethan, in a rare attempt at humor, mimicked Ava's own sarcastic tone in a meeting. This logo needs more Brooks. Like energy, the room erupted in laughter. Ava flushed with embarrassment and amusement. Emma leaned over and whispered, Oh my God, he just flirted with you in front of everyone. Blake too. Zero is real. Ava rolled her eyes but couldn't stop grinning. Don't try too hard, Ethan, she whispered as they left the room. Let me keep the monopoly on humor. He just winked, a subtle, silent response that made her heart trip over itself. But it wasn't always jokes and stolen glances. One late afternoon, when the office had mostly emptied out, Ava was fine-tuning a presentation when Ethan suddenly reached over and took her hand. Do you ever feel scared? He asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Like things are changing too fast? She froze. His hand was warm, but there was a slight tremble to it. Yes, she whispered back. I'm scared of falling for you, Ethan. Scared that this, whatever this is, might just be another snowstorm dream. Ethan gently squeezed her hand, his gaze soft and unguarded. I'm scared too, but for the first time, I want to try because of you. And that was all it took. Ava smiled, her fingers tightening around his. Okay, then let's be scared together. Just promise you won't make me send another accidental text, okay? She joked, And Ethan laughed. That quiet, husky sound that now made her weak in the knees. Across the room, Emma happened to catch that exact moment. Seconds later, the company group chat pinged. "Emma, alert! Ethan Blake just smiled for the third time today. Ava Brooks is officially a superhero." Later that night, Ava recounted the whole thing to Mia over the phone. "You turned the Frost Emperor into a real human," Mia shouted. "I need to meet this man like yesterday." Ava laughed, warmth blooming in her chest, because deep down, she knew Ethan wasn't just learning how to joke, he was learning how to love. And even though fear still lingered, neither of them wanted to stop. Once bitter rivals, now tentative lovers, they had stepped into something fragile and real, a story still being written, one stolen smile, one vanilla latte, and one gentle heartbeat at a time. And everyone in the office, they were watching witnesses to the quiet, beautiful melting of Ethan Blake. On a chilly Sunday morning, soft winter sunlight streamed through the windows of Ava Brooks's modest Brooklyn apartment, casting golden patches across the wooden floor like nature's attempt to warm New York's icy air. In cozy cat-print pajamas, Ava was humming a pop song she'd caught on the radio while making coffee in her tiny kitchen. Her phone buzzed on the table, interrupting her off-key tune. A message popped up from Frost Lord, the nickname she still hadn't changed in her contacts, despite quietly dating Ethan Blake for nearly 2 months now. Expecting a dry joke or a quirky comment about work, she casually opened it and almost dropped her coffee. "This time, it's not a mistake, Ava. Will you be the CEO of my life?" Ava froze, eyes wide, heart thumping so fast it almost drowned out the hum of the kettle. "What the heck? Where did he learn this line?" she muttered. A mix of disbelief and a goofy smile taking over her face. She read the message again, her fingers trembling slightly as she tried to determine whether this was another sarcastic prank or something else. Ethan, who once couldn't joke to save his life, had steadily warmed up, thanks to her, but this before she could even formulate a reply. The doorbell rang insistently, like the person outside couldn't wait a second longer. Still tangle-haired and in oversized pajamas, Ava opened the door and stood stunned. Ethan Blake was there, not in his usual crisp suit or designer coat, but wearing a gray knit sweater and jeans. Simple, warm, and devastatingly handsome. In his hands was a bouquet of vibrant red roses, a blaze of color against the wintry backdrop, and on his face was the gentlest smile she'd ever seen, no smirk, no guarded expression, just Ethan, sincere and glowing. "Good morning, Brooks," he said. Voice deep, but tinged with something rare. Nervousness. "I came to clarify the text." Ava gaped, one hand still gripping the doorknob. "You're serious? CEO of your life? Ethan, did you binge-watch rom-coms on Netflix? Don't tell me you've been studying cheesy lines now." She tried to hide her giddy laughter behind sarcasm, but her flushed cheeks betrayed her. Ethan stepped inside, placed the bouquet gently on her kitchen counter, and turned back to face her. His eyes sparkled with both playfulness and honesty. "I had this wild, vibrant woman teach me that life isn't just about contracts and reports," he said. "And I realized I want her next to me. Not just at work." Ava's breath hitched, her face burned, her heart raced. And then he knelt, yes, knelt right there in her messy little apartment, on the hardwood floor covered in toast crumbs and scattered cat socks. From the pocket of his sweater, he pulled out a small red velvet box and opened it, revealing a diamond ring. Elegant and simple, just like her. "Ava Brooks," he said, voice low but steady. "I used to believe I couldn't love, that I couldn't open up. But you changed everything from a mistaken text in Chicago to every smile you brought into my life. Will you marry me? Be the CEO of my heart, and, teach me how to make a better joke while you're at it." Ava stood frozen, eyes shimmering, mouth open in shock. She had expected a softer, funnier Ethan, but a proposal in her cat pajamas? "You're crazy, Ethan," she gasped, half laughing, half crying as she lunged to hug him before he could stand. Yes, but you have to promise to smile more. I am not marrying a walking iceberg." Ethan laughed a full, rich laugh that seemed to light up the entire apartment. He rose, wrapped her in his arms, and kissed her, first on the forehead, then on the lips, sweet and tender, like the whole world had disappeared, leaving only them. That night, they didn't leave the apartment. Ava, still buzzing from the surprise proposal, roped Ethan into a chaotic evening of pasta cooking and flour fights. She tried to teach him how to make carbonara without burning the kitchen, only for Ethan to knock over an entire bag of flour. "You're a disaster in the kitchen," she laughed. Wiping white powder off his cheek, he silenced her with a kiss, turning their clumsy mess into something intimate and magical. Between flickering candles and half-cooked pasta, their evening became a symphony of laughter, whispered love, and flour-dusted affection, utterly, unmistakably them. 3 months later, under a bright spring sky, Ava and Ethan held their wedding in a blooming garden on the outskirts of New York, surrounded by cherry blossoms blushing in soft pinks. It wasn't flashy, just like Ava wanted, but filled with warmth and love from the people who mattered most. Emma, her bridesmaid, couldn't stop teasing. "I told you, from accidental text to diamond ring," she giggled, adjusting Ava's simple, pearl-accented gown. Mia flew in from Chicago, loudly recounting the Frost Emperor meltdown to anyone who would listen. "I knew Ava would work miracles," she declared in her toast, drawing roars of laughter. Jack from finance raised his wine glass. "I've worked at Pinnacle Media for 5 years. Never saw Ethan smile for more than 3 seconds until Ava. This woman deserves a medal." Beside her, Ethan laughed, that bright, open smile the company had now grown used to, but still secretly celebrated. The evening was filled with jazz, dancing, and joy. Ava pulled Ethan onto the dance floor despite his protests. "I don't know how to dance," he grumbled, stepping on her foot twice. "Blake, you need so much training," she gasped between giggles. He held her close, whispered, "As long as you're the teacher, I'll learn for life." When the night came to a close, the couple stood beneath a cherry tree bathed in moonlight. Ava glanced at the ring on her finger, then at the man who once terrified half the office with a single frown. "You know," she whispered, "this all started with that ridiculous text. Who would have thought?" Ethan brushed her cheek gently. "A tiny mistake, but the best one I've ever made." They kissed under the stars, the sound of cheers behind them from Emma, Mia, Jack, and all their loved ones, sealing the final chapter of a love story that began with misunderstanding and bloomed into something legendary. And at Pinnacle Media Group, the tale of the snowstorm couple, 2 rivals who turned a Chicago blizzard into a forever love, would live on. One